Fuel mileage was the key to victory at Michigan this past Sunday. When Kevin Harvick had a tire issue, many did not expect him up front at the end of the race. But after outlasting Team Penske drivers Joey Logano and Brad Keselowski on gas, Happy Harvick got the checkered flag, or rather, his son Keelan got the checkered flag for him as Harvick won the race. Hello and welcome to another edition of ROSS Racin, brought to you by RO Yellow, Richmond County's brand new online business directory. I'm Matt Harrelson. Alongside with me, as usual, is Russell Parker. And over on the other screen is our good friend Joseph Lombard, a.k.a. N2SC4R on YouTube. On tonight's show, we've got all of the fallout from Michigan with the playoff cutoff line on the Cup Series, the start of the Truck Series playoffs, and much, much more. But first, let's recap Kevin Harvick's performance in Brooklyn, Michigan. Joseph, we'll start with you. Harvick had the best fuel strategy, but how do you think he had that over everybody else in the field?
Well, I think pitting a little early was his strategy. He pitted under that last green flag run, I would say. I didn't really watch the race too much, but for what I saw is that he was able to save some fuel, stay behind guys to save some fuel, because I know when you run up front, sometimes it just you waste more fuel than you are saving when you're running up front and not in anybody's draft. So I feel Harvick being behind other drivers played a big factor in him being able to save some fuel, because it looked like at one point he was a little bit short on fuel. Then all of a sudden his crew chief came over the radio and said, "You're good to go. You can start trying to make your moves now to the front." So I think just being behind cars and definitely making sure that the team adds enough fuel to the car really helped them out, because we saw some teams that did not fill the car up properly with full tank of fuel, and that's why they ran out and had a few laps short on fuel to the checkered flag. So I think, like I said, Harvick being behind cars helped him save some, and then once he knew that he had enough fuel, he was able to charge up to the front and just have enough fuel, even had enough fuel to give Keelan a victory lap, do some burnouts, and just went on in the victory lane.
Well, Russell, your Penske drivers took a dive onto pit road with less than 10 to go due to worrying about running out of fuel, but surely they knew this was going to happen. Why did they take this fuel strategy?
Well, anything can happen in a race, and one thing that can happen is cautions, and that's probably what Team Penske was gambling on, was hoping that you would see some cautions come out of the late race, and that will give them the edge to continue on. Of course, when you got a caution laps, you're saving fuel, you're able to turn off the engine and not run so much gas out. So that's why I feel like Penske was trying to go for it. Took a gamble on that. Fortunately for them, they can afford to take gambles this late in the season because they are locked into the playoffs. So they can try different things out. And, of course, they already had success at this track earlier this season, so I don't think it hurts them at all to try out different strategies that could help them when it comes to playoff time.
Well, of course, hindsight is 20/20, and I'm sure looking back, they would have done something differently. Want to know who else thinks they could have done things differently over the course of the season? That would be Jimmy Johnson, Daniel Suarez, Ryan Newman, and Clint Bowyer. The four of them are fighting hard to make the playoffs. Just 28 points separate them after Michigan. Now, there's only room for two, assuming nobody new wins the rest of the regular season. With just 3 races left, who do you think will get in? Russell, we'll start with you.
You know, I kind of did some I kind of looked at the stats on these 4 drivers for the next 3 races that's coming up. That's Darlington, Bristol, and Indy. And really, if you just kind of looked at what points they could accumulate just off the race finishes on an average finish, I kind of have Newman and Suarez really coming out of this one. But, I mean, you look at the veteran drivers, Jimmy Johnson and Ryan Newman there, those guys are going to really push hard. They know how to get in. They know how to do this. Whereas, you got Clint Bowyer. I should also say he's a veteran too. But Daniel Suarez, those 2 guys, they're a little – I feel like they're kind of on a more of an emotional path for them. They're trying to make it in. They're kind of the underdogs here. And I feel like they're going to make a mistake somewhere. But I would still say, because Daniel Suarez didn't have a whole lot of stats on him due to being fairly new to the Cup Series, I would say that, still watch out for him because he could make a lot of noise coming up.
Well, let's kick it back to you, Joseph. Just 3 races left. Who you got?
I'm going to say it's going to be close between Clint Boyer and Jimmy Johnson. I feel that can still be making the playoffs. But you look at Daniel Suarez in the last few races of what he's accomplished. I think he's been one of those drivers that I would watch out for because he's been definitely improving over the last few races throughout the season compared to what he did last season. But yeah, he's still right there on the borderline of not missing, not making the playoffs. But Jimmy Johnson, a 7-time champion, what a shock would it be for him to not make the playoffs this season? I know the last couple of years he's struggled and stuff. And honestly, if he does make the playoffs, I don't see him going further into the round of 12. That team just has not shown any speed and consistency at all. And that team has struggled not only just the last couple of years, but especially the last month. They just haven't showed the results that they needed. Of course, they had to run in with Ryan Blaney at Watkins Glen, then at Michigan early on, got into the wall, and it forced them to go a few laps down. Couldn't gain any points there. Clint Boyer could have taken that opportunity to gain some big points over Jimmy Johnson, but then all of a sudden, contact happened late in the race. He got sent up into the wall. And all of a sudden, he's done for the day. So it's still really close. I feel Jimmy Johnson and Clint Boyer could still make the playoffs, and that would leave Suarez and Ryan Newman out. But honestly, I think I would still want to watch out for Daniel Suarez. As consistent as he's been the last few races, he could be one of those guys that could pull off an upset and throw out 7-time champion Jimmy Johnson. But Ryan Newman is also right there as well. So we'll just have to see how it plays out. The last 3 races, a lot can happen. You got a half-mile racetrack at Bristol. You got Darlington Raceway coming up in a couple weeks, and then you've got the big 2.5 mile at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So different, unique tracks, and so it should be interesting. But to me, I still feel Jimmy Johnson and Clint Boyer can still make the playoffs this season.
All right, well, switching vehicles here, while many questions remain for the Cup Series, those same have been answered for the Truck Series. Michigan concluded the regular season for the pickups. Only 12 points separate all 8 drivers, meaning in this first round, it's anyone's game for the championship. We could see guys like regular season champion Grant Enfinger or the Watermelon Man, Ross Chastain, totally miss out in these first 3 races. So, Joseph, how do you foresee this first round play out for the trucks?
Oh, I'm interested to see how the first round is going to play out, especially starting at Bristol. Great track to start off the playoffs of the Truck Series. But I feel this is going to be a great playoff run for these truck drivers. I feel this is going to be probably definitely a series to watch for, definitely a playoffs to watch for, other than the Cup Series and the Xfinity Series, because you got drivers like Grant Enfinger. He doesn't have a win this season, but he's been very consistent all year long. Won the regular season championship. You got Austin Hill that's also been consistent as well, that I feel that you need to watch out for. But how about Ross Chastain? He has pulled some amazing things this season that I haven't seen a NASCAR driver do in a long time. Ross Chastain just impresses me each and every race. He just goes out there, and I guarantee you, if he hadn't had the problems at Michigan, he was going to be the truck that could have easily won that race. But for him to not even run for Truck Series points at the beginning of the season, to also make the decision to move his championship points over the Truck Series, I would say after the first several races of the season, and all of a sudden he started picking up wins, picking up top 5s, top 10s, and all of a sudden he's in the hunt to make the playoffs, which he did this past weekend at Michigan. So I watch out for Ross Chastain to pull off something amazing. If Ross Chastain could come out with a championship this season, it's going to be one of the biggest stories that you're going to hear from NASCAR for a very long time, because here's a guy that worked at a watermelon field, and he's just such an underdog to basically everybody. And from Nice Motorsports, out of all truck teams as well, that's pulling off these wins and these consistent results. I would just be so happy to see Ross Chastain win it. But pretty much close, like you said, 12 points between all 8 of these drivers. So it's going to be a fun championship battle for sure for the Truck Series this season.
Absolutely. So what do you think, Russell? Pull out your crystal ball. Who you got?
Yeah, I feel like that For Bristol, I think it's going to be a hard-fought race for everyone. However, Johnny Sauter, he kind of dominated that race last year, and I feel like he can do it again. So I kind of got him winning that race moving forward. But Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, that's a really unique track for the Truck Series to go to. And I really don't know who to go with on that one because I feel like that's kind of a bit of a wild card. But I do like Brett Moffitt and Matt Crafton for that track. Las Vegas, when it comes up, Brett Moffitt, I think it's going to be another hard runner there. When they were here last time, Kyle Busch whooped them all. But Ross Chastain, I feel like he'll definitely get a good run there. I think he'll get a good run across all three of these races in the first playoff round. But even moving forward, just like Joseph said, Ross Chastain has just been on another level. He's run so well in the Truck Series. He's run pretty good in the Xfinity Series as well. But of course, he's running for the Truck Series playoff championship. So we'll see how it goes from there. But yeah, I don't think that you're going to see Tyler Ankrum and Austin Hill make it through the first round. I feel like those two drivers are going to be knocked out. Tyler Ankrum, he's a rookie. He got a good win earlier this season, but I feel like that he's probably not going to be able to make it forward. You kind of have to get some more experience as you go along in your career. And Austin Hill, I feel like we're going to see some bad luck out of one of these drivers. And Austin Hill's going to face that bad luck.
All right, so with so many drivers so closely together, starting with you, Joseph, pick two guys to make the championship four, and then Russell, we'll have you pick the next two. Who you got, Joseph?
This is for the Truck Series?
Yeah.
Two drivers. I feel, like I said, Ross Chastain going to be one of them. And I feel, honestly, I can see Johnny Sauter. So Ross Chastain, Johnny Sauter, those two have been the most probably very consistent all season long. Definitely championship contenders. But Grant Enfinger can pull off an upset too. I mean, I know he doesn't have wins this season, but he's been so consistent. And that's all you need to do to win a championship is be consistent. You don't have to necessarily win. Of course, in today's system, win and you're in, or for the championship race, you want to be the highest finisher to win the championship out of the four drivers. So, but the two drivers, Ross Chastain and Johnny Sauter.
All right, following that up, Russell, who you got next up?
Well, I actually had those two on my list, but I'm going to go with Mr. Canadian Stuart Friesen. He's had a tremendous run this season as well, and I'm going to have to say Grant Enfinger, Johnny Sauter, Ross Chastain, all those guys. Those are really good drivers to pick to go forward, and I think you can't go wrong with any of them to make it and win the championship. I feel like Stewie's going to win the championship. I think he's going to be the upset of Ross Chastain, but right now, I think that those two guys and Enfinger and Sauter are going to definitely be a force to be reckoned with in this playoff run. All
right, well, let's pick some more good drivers as we head in the groove. Pick a driver from the top 10 finish. Start with you, Russell. Who you got?
For In the Groove, I've got Ryan Preece. He started 29th at Michigan and finished 7th. That was a great run for him. For Tyler Reddick in the Xfinity Series, I got him. He started 10th, finished 3rd. It was a lot of solid racing in the Xfinity Series up at Mid-Ohio. For the Truck Series, I got Ray, I'm going to make sure I say this right, Ray Ciccarelli. He started 30th and finished 9th. And for a guy you don't really hear about, making a big impact like that on a race, that's really good for him and his team.
What about you, Joseph? You want to take a stab and give us some drivers in the groove this week?
I agree with the Cubs series. Ryan Preece finished 7th. That was a great run for him. Of course, you had some drivers running out of gas on the final couple of laps at Michigan, but nonetheless, he was consistent and kind of up in the top 10, top 15 all race long. So I feel Ryan Preece, definitely a good 7th place finish for him at Michigan. To be honest with you, I did not watch the Truck Series and the Xfinity Series because I was out of town over the weekend. Didn't really get to watch both those races, but so I really can't really give a clue on who I would pick for out of the in the groove for this week. But yeah, my Cup Series pick, I'd say Ryan Preece. I have to go agree with Russell on that one.
All right, so NASCAR is, of course, moving on to Bristol Motor Speedway this weekend, Saturday night, under the lights in the late summer heat on the half mile. Those hopeful of making the playoffs will look to grab all the points they can to make it, while those who are locked in will look to secure playoff points by winning stages or the race itself. There is, of course, sure to be drama throughout and at the conclusion of this race. So, Joseph, what do you expect to see from Bristol?
What is there not to expect from Bristol? You're going to see a lot of bumping and banging, a lot of contact, maybe some carnage happen out there. Maybe even some tempers flying out at Bristol Motor Speedway. We always see tempers go over people's heads at Bristol Motor Speedway. It's just a fun racetrack, just some great racing to watch. And fortunately, this is going to be my first time going to Bristol this week. I'm flying out this weekend to go watch all 3 races over there. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And I know people have told me when you go to Bristol for the first time, or even if it's not your first time, the atmosphere is just unbelievable. It's just so awesome being there. The experience is amazing. But I feel Saturday night is going to be a great race. I feel we're going to see a lot of action, a lot of passes, a lot of great side-by-side battles. Maybe the bumpers might be used as well. Multiple grooves, see which lane fits the best for some drivers. And there's going to be some great weather out there on Saturday night. So I expect a good crowd out there. But, for me, I'm just looking for a fantastic race. And Bristol, especially the night race at Bristol, always provides that.
Yep, and I'm sure you'll get it. Now, Russell, if you want to touch on that, you can. But I also want to ask you, do any of the drivers on the playoff bubble have a shot at winning this race?
With the way it's been, I feel like the best driver that's going to be suited for this race would probably be Clint Boyer. But I wouldn't count out. I mean, I know Jimmy Johnson's been having a down season, but I still wouldn't count him out for this race. He's got multiple wins at this track, and he can certainly do it again if he can get on the ball. Of course, he had a really good, solid run with his new crew chief at Watkins Glen. If he can continue that onward at Bristol, I think he's going to get a solid finish. But yeah, touching back on to the night race, this is the 20th year anniversary of Dale Earnhardt spinning out Terry Labonte for her to win on that one, where he rattled his cage. And, of course, there's so many different rivalries that's happened out of this race. We've seen Carl Edwards get into a few of them, one with Tony Stewart. The other one was with Kyle Busch back in the day. There's been a lot of drama out of this track. I love the Bristol night races. And they get a cool trophy for this. They get a sword. It's a gladiator sword, so it'd be really cool to take that home.
Well, I think it's very appropriate to hand out a gladiator sword. We're going to talk about this here in just a minute, but, of course, known as the last great Coliseum. That just makes sense. And, of course, we'll ask you, are you not entertained? Speaking of being entertained, it's time to hit back on a segment that we've gotten away from, and it's time to hit it again. Checkers or wreckers? We've got 5 questions. Let us know whether you think it's checkers or wreckers. Joseph, let's start with you. Number 1, this Michigan race was a better race than earlier this season, and the credit goes to the Aero rules package. Checkers or wreckers?
Checkers, for sure. To be honest with you, I really didn't enjoy the June race all too much because it was mainly if you got up front, you had the fast car. Of course, Joey Logano had a fast car all weekend long, and nobody couldn't pass him. But I think it was just very hard to pass out there at Michigan in June. Just everybody just following each other around and stuff. So I really didn't find June's race entertaining. So then when it came August, of course, adding the PJ1 compound, and of course, they changed the Aero a little bit. I feel there was a lot of passes, a lot of battles. The restarts were crazy as always, 3 or 4 wide, maybe even 5 wide at times. But yeah, definitely checkers for me. This past race at Michigan was better than June.
What do you think, Russell? Michigan better this time around?
Yeah, I'm going to say checkers for sure. In addition to the PJ1 and the tweaks that they made, I think what also, who else should be given credit to will be the crew chiefs and those guys at the shop who looked at that first race and thought, what can we do to improve on it, and how can we make this a better race for our driver? And everybody just got better. So I think that's what it was. You see a lot more passing in this race. Like Joseph said, my guy Joey, he dominated that race. But overall, I think that this was a heck of a lot better race. And Pocono, we'll talk about Pocono, was a lot better race too on the second go around versus the first race. And I think there's some similarities to those two tracks for that reason, is because the crew chief and everyone who works on those cars, they look at the first race, thought what they can do better, and I think you're going to see that moving forward with other tracks that we've been to that weren't that great of a race, and you're going to see them in the second go around be a heck of a lot better.
All right. Up next on Checkers or Wreckers, coming to you, Russell, Ryan Blaney brings beer to Jimmy Johnson's motorhome to discuss their issues from Watkins Glen.
Checkers for sure. This is brilliant. Of course, I don't drink beer myself, but I know a lot of people who do, and that definitely solves a lot of problems. But just going over, chit-chatting. These guys are great friends off the track, and for them to handle like they did before, just after Watkins Glen, that week leading up to Michigan, it was just kind of really awkward to see them like that. But they got over it. Ryan Blaney stepped forward and made the move, and they worked things out, which is great.
What do you think, Joseph? Burying the hatchet with Brews, Checkers or Wreckers? Checkers or Wreckers?
Checkers. Pretty much what Russell said is pretty much what I was going to say. Yeah, it feels like a problem solved with booze as well, apparently. According to Bubba Wallace, Coke would be a proper way to handle things. But no, obviously, understandably, Jimmy Johnson was frustrated. He's having a frustrating season, and he's on the verge of missing the playoffs. So when he had that run-in with Ryan Blaney, the tempers and his emotions were running high on Ryan Blaney and stuff. So very understandable. I think any driver would feel the same way too had they been in that situation. So, Ryan Blaney took full responsibility. He didn't mean to wreck Jimmy Johnson. It wasn't intentional at all. So he invited Jimmy Johnson to have a beer with him, and they talked it out. And it seemed like everything was solved, no issues between them. But of course, you never know with NASCAR and drivers. They could say, oh yeah, everything's good, but then they don't really admit that, yeah, you're still upset with them. Got Bristol this weekend coming up, and Darlington coming up as well. So we'll see if Jimmy Johnson's over it with Ryan Blaney. But just looking at the history of these drivers' behaviors, I would not be surprised if the whole situation was moved aside and Jimmy Johnson's just looking at the big picture now and just trying to focus on making the playoffs at this point.
Yeah, you can definitely solve a lot of the world's problems with a few brewskis. So, Joseph, coming back to you, number 3, David Ragan announced Wednesday that he would be stepping away from NASCAR full-time. Checkers or Wreckers?
Honestly, I'm kind of in between on this, between Checkers Wreckers. Like, I'm 50-50. I'm surprised that he's announced his retirement. I'm not sure if I call it a retirement yet because he is still interested in running part-time. If he does get a ride for a team that he can run part-time with. But at the same time, I'm not surprised because, he's been around the sport for a while, and I think he thinks it's the right time for him to go. He said he wants to spend time with family, so I don't blame him on that. But I'm kind of 50-50 on Checkers and Wreckers here. So, like I said, surprised but not surprised at this point. Honestly, I'm kind of in between on this, between Checkers Wreckers. Like, I'm 50-50. I'm surprised that he's announced his retirement. I'm not sure if I call it a retirement yet because he is still interested in running part-time. If he does get a ride for a team that he can run part-time with. But at the same time, I'm not surprised because, he's been around the sport for a while, and I think he thinks it's the right time for him to go. He said he wants to spend time with family, so I don't blame him on that. But I'm kind of 50-50 on Checkers and Wreckers here. So, like I said, surprised but not surprised at this point.
All right, what do you think? Reagan stepping aside, Checkers or Wreckers?
I'm going to say Checkers on this one. I think everyone measures their own success differently, and for some guys, it's not about winning a championship. I think David Ragan is probably content with where he is with NASCAR. He's got to win. He's got one of the most memorable finishes in NASCAR with him and David Gillian finishing 1-2 in 2013 at Talladega. That one was almost at nighttime with the way that race went. But Ragan has had a very successful season under a team that you would consider underfunded. So I think having him retiring and going, not fully retiring, so that's actually not a bad thing either, because you can still get a ride potentially and still compete, do the thing you love, but still at the same time have that family time as well that you've been missing. And I believe he knows that his kids are getting older and he wants to be able to spend more memorable time with them. So it's very understandable, and respect to him for wanting to take that next step forward.
Yeah, I like how you put it. Success is measured different ways. For some people it's championships, for others it's longevity. Perhaps maybe that would be it for David Ragan. So speaking of longevity, we're going to talk about the opposite of that in Hailie Deegan up next on Checkers or Wreckers. Russell, Hailie Deegan will win the K&N East race tonight at Bristol.
I'm going to say Wreckers on this one. There's no doubt she has a lot of talent. She's definitely going to be a force to be reckoned with in a few years in the National Tour Series. But I feel like she's going to get maybe a top 5. Not win a race, but a top 5. She's pretty much kicked butt over in the West K&N West Series. But coming into the East Series is going to be a little bit different. And I think she's going to have to probably do more of more learning than actually trying to compete for a win in this type of race, because it is a different atmosphere. But I think that she'll get a top 5 out of it regardless of how she approaches the race. From whether it's a learning perspective, I'll say, hey, I'm going to win the race. So overall, I think she's winning the top 5, but not a win.
All right, Joseph, what do you think? Hailie Deegan taking the flag at the K&N East race. Checkers or Wreckers?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Wreckers on this one. I feel like she could get a top 5 finish over there. DGR equipment is a good equipment for the East Series. Of course, DGR finished in the top 5 over there with one of their other drivers. So I feel like she could get a top 5 run. But yeah, definitely I don't see a win happening. I mean, can a win happen? Anything can happen at Bristol, so absolutely not saying it's possible. But I think for her, for that race, she's going to go out there as well, not only just to go out and win the race, but trying to learn from that team as well and see what she's capable of out there. I think it's going to be fun to watch her out there. I'm going to be out there on the track just in time to see that K&N race get going and stuff. So it's going to be interesting to see how she does. But yeah, I feel top 3, top 5 finish she could get, but I'm going to go with Wreckers on this one. I don't think she'll get the checker flag tonight.
All right, and finally for Checkers or Wreckers, Joseph, there is no clear favorite to win the Cup Series championship at this point in the season. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, no clear point to win the championship at this point. Kyle Busch and Joey Logano, they've been very consistent. They've been the 2 most consistent drivers all season. They've been the top 2 in points all season long, if you don't look at it as the playoff system and them getting the wins and stuff. But yeah, I feel it's going to be one of those 2. But Kevin Harvick has shown some speed late in the going. I know Kevin Harvick started off slow to begin the season, but when he got that win in New Hampshire, it seemed like that momentum has built up again. And I think Kevin Harvick's going to be back to be a threat to win the championship as well. Martin Truex Jr., he's been fast as well. So yeah, I have to agree. Wreckers right now, there is no clear cut right now to see who's going to win the championship this season. So I think right now it's just too soon to call. So, but it's going to be very interesting to see once the playoffs get started on who's going to be the most consistent out there. And of course, you have to make the championship 4 as well. So yeah, too soon to call right now.
All right, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree, Checkers. And the reason why I say that for is pretty much the exact same reason Jojo said. It's a long road ahead for these guys. You're looking at 13 more races to go, and we haven't even started the playoffs yet. So anything can happen, especially when we get into the playoffs. You might see the best driver, which right now you could say is between Kyle Busch and Joey Logano, because they're the most consistent at the top 2 there. Those guys could very well get knocked out late in the playoffs, and we could see that happen. And you're seeing guys like Kevin Harvick, who has had a very slow start to the season, finally picks up some momentum, getting 2 wins now, and he could very well be that guy who's going to be very quiet and could just reach out there and win it. Kind of like what we saw with Logano last year, where he was kind of quiet throughout the season, and finally built momentum up, won the championship. Martin Truex Jr., I feel like he's been kind of up and down this season. I'm not sure if he's going to be making it all the way this season, but he's still there every single weekend, so I can't count him out. And even drivers like Brad Keselowski and Denny Hamlin, those guys are for sure can still be a threat to the win. And who knows what happens in the playoffs, where these guys could be holding back right now because they know that they have a ticket into the playoffs, and they're going to save their resources, their best equipment for the playoffs, and that can very well turn the tables moving forward.
Well, it seems like we all know one thing, and that is we know nothing. So let's piggyback off of the third question, kind of a bonus question here for you. Russell, I'll start with you. Back to David Ragan. Who do you think will take the wheel of the 38 Ford?
Ooh, that's I know there's a couple of drivers that could come out of the Xfinity Series. I know that there's been a lot of rumors with Joe Gibbs Racing to have Christopher Bell move up and potentially either take Eric Jones' ride or Matt DiBenedetto's ride. And if one of those two get knocked out, perhaps they go over to the 38. Or you might see someone like Austin Cindric, who's been running well for Team Penske in the Xfinity Series. Maybe Penske wants to move him up, but they don't have a ride yet for him, so maybe they want to put him in the 38 and work with their team and maybe make an alliance there. There's a lot of play in who could potentially take that ride, but regardless of who takes it, it's definitely going to be even though it's Cup Series and with the Cup Series being like it is, it's a very competitive level, and whoever takes that ride is going to have to be ready for that.
All right, Joseph, who do you think? Who ends up potentially behind the wheel of the 38 car?
I don't see Christopher Bell going in that 38 car, that's for sure. But it could maybe knock if Christopher Bell so happens to take over the 20 car for next season and that knocks Eric Jones out, that could definitely potentially put Eric Jones into that 38 car. Or like Matt DiBenedetto, there's rumors about that right now that he may not be back in that 95 car next year. Hopefully he is back in that 95 car next year, despite all the results he's been having the last few races. But yeah, you could see drivers coming up in the Xfinity Series. Like, I would have to agree with the Austin Cindric one as well. Penske doesn't have a ride for him in the Cup Series right now. That hopefully one of these days that'll open the door up for Austin Cindric in the future. But Austin Cindric, he's a Ford driver as well, and the 38 team is a Ford as well. So it wouldn't be a bad move to put Austin Cindric in that 38 car. It's going to definitely be tough, especially with the equipment Front Row has, and to put Austin Cindric in that ride because he's going to be put in a top competitive series. But for me, I think Austin Cindric can move up into 38, or it's going to be down to Eric Jones to that 38 car.
All right, well, up next, it's time for Track Facts, brought to you by RO Yellow. As I mentioned earlier, Richmond County's brand new online business directory. Bristol Motor Speedway, formerly known as Bristol International Raceway and Bristol Raceway, is located, of course, in Bristol, Tennessee. Constructed in 1960, it held its first NASCAR race in July of 1961. 58 years later, Bristol is among, of course, the most popular tracks on the schedule because of its distinct features, which include up to 30-degree banking, an all-concrete surface, pit roads on both straightaways, and stadium-like seating with a capacity of 162,000. It has also been named one of the loudest NASCAR tracks and is dubbed the last great Coliseum. The construction cost was just $600,000, which, of course, you can't buy any racetrack for $600,000 anymore. Bristol could very easily have opened in under a different name. The first proposed site for the Speedway was in Piney Flats, Tennessee, but according to those who built the track, the idea met local opposition. So the track could have been called Piney Flats International Speedway. Doesn't sound as good, but I wonder how Piney Flats feels about missing out on one of the most popular racing facilities in America.
Yeah, for real. But you're only a few miles up the road from them anyway, so it probably doesn't hurt them too bad. But to have the track named after it would be pretty sweet, I would think.
Yeah. Joseph, real quick before we move on, any memories from Bristol that come to mind?
Oh, man, where do we start? There's a lot of memories from Bristol. The memories I could definitely remember on top of my head, the famous bump and run move that Jeff Warren put on Rusty Wallace back in the fall race in 2002. That's honestly probably the reason why I became a Jeff Warren fan was that night because I started watching NASCAR in 2002. So that moment comes into mind. There's definitely, of course, I've seen races in the past between Dale Sr. and Terry Labonte. Darrell Waltrip winning 12 races out there at Bristol, which is phenomenal. You got you always remember the moments where tempers always flared over there at Bristol as well, with Warburton and Dale Earnhardt Jr. or Tony Stewart, Matt Kenseth, Tony Stewart with his famous helmet throw out there. But honestly, memories will always be made at Bristol Motor Speedway. We could definitely see some more happening this weekend. Of course, Kyle Busch sweeping all 3 series twice at that racetrack comes into mind as well. So memories always made at Bristol, always a lot of good memories that I don't know where you can start off at, but definitely, definitely a lot of memories for sure, which I hope we make some more this weekend.
Yeah, you mentioned Jeff Gordon bumping over Rusty Wallace, and actually, it's kind of funny. You said you become a fan of Gordon that when it came to that track, and with Logano, I was kind of a fan of Logano beforehand, but whenever him and Denny Hamlin got into it at Bristol one year, that was where I really solidified my fandom for Joe Logano. So Bristol is probably the best place to find your favorite driver.
Seems like fight's bringing everybody together in Bristol. So
Of
perhaps
course.
this weekend, Joseph, you'll be able to make some new memories because, as you mentioned earlier, you're going to be at the world's fastest half mile this weekend, along with a ton of other NASCAR YouTubers and streamers. So can you give us some of the details on what you guys are going to be doing and what you guys have planned for this weekend?
Well, we're going to be staying at A&B place. So, we rented a house for the weekend. We're going to stay just a mile and a half or 2 miles from the racetrack. We're going to be out in the garages all weekend long, all Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. It's going to be a fun time down there. NASCAR. We also planned meet and greet out at Bristol Motor Speedway at 12 o'clock on Saturday over at the NASCAR pole position booth outside the racetrack, where fans can come and meet some of their favorite NASCAR YouTuber personalities out there. But there's going to be a lot of great content creators that are going to be out there that I'm really looking forward to meeting them all and hanging out with them. Just enjoy some short track racing at Bristol under the lights. And of course, Lombard Bros Gaming is going to be back on Ryan Sieg's car as the primary sponsor for that 3019 in the Xfinity Series this Friday night. So that's going to be a fun memory once again over there at this weekend at Bristol. Just a lot is definitely going to go on at Bristol Motor Speedway. We also have some other plans that I'm not allowed to talk about yet, but I'll definitely throw them out there on my social media. But we also have a couple other things coming up that weekend for Bristol.
All right, we'll definitely be on the lookout for that. So before we end the show, just like every week, let's get some predictions. Russell, let's start with you. Who you got winning this weekend?
I'm going to go ahead and start with the Truck Series. I've got Johnny Sauter taking this win again. He won it last year. I think he can do it again. For Xfinity Series, another repeat winner at Bristol will be Christopher Bell. I think you just can't go wrong with him in this late in the season. For the Cup Series, though, earlier this season, we saw Kyle Busch, Kurt Busch kind of going back and forth in that race where Kurt was trying to chase down Kyle. I think this time you're going to see the other Busch brother win. Kurt Busch is going to get his second victory in 2019.
All right, and finally, Joseph, who you got this weekend? Give us some predictions.
Well, man, I tell you what, Russell got some pretty close picks to mine as well. I would say Johnny Sauter as well, but honestly, I'm going to have to go with the surprise win. How about Ross Chastain? I mean, he seems like he's able to win at every type of track right now, winning at a short track, winning at a mile and a half, a 2 mile racetrack. He could have won a 2 mile racetrack in Michigan this past weekend, but that, of course, unfortunate circumstance on pit road came into play. But honestly, you never know with Ross Chastain. He seems like he's good everywhere. Of course, he impressed me at Eldora as well until a late race incident. Never ran on dirt there, but I feel Ross Chastain for the Truck Series. For the Xfinity Series, I have to agree with Christopher Bell. He seems fantastic at short tracks. Along with Bristol, I feel he can win both races this season out of Bristol, so I watch out for him. And then for the Cup Series, he mentioned Kurt Busch. I'm going to have to go with Kyle Busch on this one. I mean, Kyle Busch, he's been so dominant at Bristol Motor Speedway the last 2-3 years, winning fall race, spring races. I mean, just phenomenal stats in the last few years at Bristol. So you can't count out Kyle Busch at Bristol, especially, whether it's a day or night race. He's always going to be up there right towards the front, maybe contend for the win. So I feel it's going to be Ross Chastain, Christopher Bell, and Kyle Busch as my picks for this weekend at Bristol.
All right, well, that is going to do it for this edition of Ross Racing, brought to you by RO Yellow, the new online business directory here in Richmond County. Joseph Lombard, we really appreciate you joining us. Of course, you can find him on YouTube under N2SC4R. Joseph, thanks again for joining us. Can't wait to see you next time, and of course, have a great time over in Bristol.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm gonna have a good time in Bristol. I'll definitely make some content out there. It'll soon go up on my YouTube channel. But I appreciate you guys having me on again. It's always a good time coming on, and I hope to get back on the show with you guys pretty soon.
All right, sounds good. In the meantime, that is Russell Parker. I am Matt Harrelson, and we'll see you right back here on the track next week for another edition of Ross Racing. Have a great week.